Eastward is probably the first game in the past 10 years that makes me not want to shoot myself. It isn't perfect, but this game has a lot of heart and passion put into it. Eastward completely blew my expectations through the roof, and almost everything about this game is masterfully crafted, from the gameplay design to the colorful NPC sprites. The art style alone is enough to sell me this game, and dare I say that this indie title could be a possible Game of the Year contender despite the flaws. But before I get more in depth, grab your backpacks and frying pans, people. We're heading east. It's really refreshing to play a good, clean, and honest video game. Eastward is like reliving the magic of playing old-school Japanese adventure games from the NES days. Sure, this game has its fair share of setbacks, but thankfully, it got overshadowed by the captivating art style, the cute characters, and the orgasmic soundtrack, but I'll get back to that later. So, what's Eastward about? Okay, admittedly, I didn't really understand much of the story. By the time I finished the game, I had more questions than answers, so I had to do a second playthrough to understand the game's narrative a little better, but here's what I understood. The world of Eastward takes place in a post-apocalyptic setting where everything is slowly being destroyed by a toxic cloud known as the miasma. You play as John and Sam. They're a family that lives underground and they survive day to day by digging in the mines. John is a silent protagonist. He lived underground for 40 years, and one day during a mining operation he found Sam encased in a glass tank, and he took her in as his daughter. Sam is the ray of sunshine in this game. She has telekinetic powers but has no recollection of her past. Her innocence and curiosity about the world are the same feelings I had when I first started playing 2D RPGs when I was younger. One day, the two were kicked out by the mayor of their town, and with nowhere else to go, they embarked on an epic adventure to different locations above ground and to find out the truth about Sam's mysterious past. I didn't really understand everything else about the plot, but the gameplay, on the other hand, is something that I really enjoyed the most. It's very simple. If you grew up playing 2D adventure games, then this is right up your alley. For the most part, I like the gameplay synergy of John and Sam. You use John as your muscle to fight monsters, while Sam is your support type character to stun enemies. However, I do have some issues with this though. John has a lot of offensive capabilities, but you lack any sort of defensive abilities. Meanwhile, Sam has no way of fighting general mobs, and her special abilities feel very limiting. You can still utilize her ability to stun opponents in place so John can land a free hit, but that's about it. Everything else about Sam's abilities is used to solve puzzles. Yes, you can unlock recovery and defensive abilities for Sam by exploring the game's world, however, you won't be using them often since you have a plethora of recovery items that you can craft in the game. I just wish Sam had more options when it comes to dealing with enemies so that she can have more presence in general combat. Most of the enemies are easy to deal with, but when it came to the boss battles, it was a surprise to me that most of them are actually good. They're not hard, but what makes the fights good is that it leans towards mechanics rather than difficulty, and that's okay. I wasn't actually expecting for them to be well crafted, especially the bosses in the last chapter. Here, take a look. Pretty epic, right? Now that we're done talking story and gameplay, let's move on with the next point. Moving on with the levels, seeing the colorful towns for the first time made my jaw hit the floor because of how rich it is in warm color and detail. The world feels so alive, and the 90s Japanese aesthetic accompanied by the 8-bit music composed by Joel Korelitz is a marvel to behold. As I was making this video, I realized not many developers do warm and colorful games anymore. It's always dark, gritty, and depressing when it comes to most AAA games, but Eastward is the complete opposite with its warm visuals that blends well with the game's slice of life tone. I also like how every NPC is different. Other games would resort to recycling NPC models, but in this game, each character you bump into is unique and memorable, like this guy who has testicles for a chin. The level environments and puzzles are really clever too. The puzzles aren't that hard, but they are very fun to solve. Oh, and the way how they place hidden chests and items are really clever as well. They blend so seamlessly into the game's environment, and the game never fails to surprise me when uncovering secrets. A lot of chests are so cleverly hidden that I think this is probably one of the best 2D level designs that I have seen in a long while. Another highlight that I want to point out is the original soundtrack. I don't think there are any words to describe how good these 8-bit tracks are. The beats are so good that for the first time in my life, it made me thankful to be alive. Here, listen to this. I may sound like I'm exaggerating, but that's how I really feel. There's always good and appropriate music for every moment in the game. From somber moments to lighthearted cutscenes, the 8-bit melody playing in the background is always guaranteed to be an absolute banger. Remember when I said the game has its fair share of flaws? First problem that I want to point out is the pacing. I've read complaints from other players that there is way too much dialogue, and yes, that is true. You'll spend most of your time reading than actually playing the game, and admittedly, this can get boring, especially when you're doing multiple playthroughs. For some people, they won't mind this issue, but for a lot of people, this can actually hinder their enjoyment of the game. It would have been nice if there was an option to skip cutscenes, but no, you'll be forced to sit through massive walls of dialogue exposition before getting to the gameplay. You know, it took me about 20 hours to finish Eastward, but I should let you know that most of my time spent is reading dialogue than playing. The game just has way too much dialogue and not enough action. And for a game with so much dialogue, the story can feel a bit messy at times, but that could just be me. Other gripes I want to mention is the lack of replay value. This is just me, but maybe a new game plus with stronger enemies would have at least made it worth playing the game again. I also think it was a missed opportunity to add some sort of two-player split-screen co-op mode, where one player controls John and the other plays as Sam. I get this game is designed to be played by one person, but imagine how fun it would be to fight monsters with a friend. Who knows, maybe one day someone will make a mod for it. Eastward is another triumph for indie game development, and puts most AAA games to shame. This game was able to take what we loved from classic 2D adventure games, and they were able to make a work of art that revolved around the best things of what made adventure games great. Again, the game's not perfect, but I think it's still worth your time and money. And it's like $13 on Steam and $23 in the Nintendo shop, so they're pretty affordable, unlike most AAA games. Lastly, I was actually surprised that this game was developed in Shanghai. Nowadays, when you hear a game that comes from China, negative thoughts usually come to mind, but Eastward is probably one of the few games from China that actually feels like an honest video game. I'm kind of actually glad this game changed the way how I see Chinese developed video games. Not all of them are cash grabs and mobile game ripoffs, and hopefully we see more honest video games come out from China. And before I sign off, I just wanted to say thanks for watching until the very end. It's been weeks since the last time I posted a video, and hopefully this was worth the wait. I have another indie game that I want to showcase, so I hope you stay tuned for that. With all that said, thanks again for watching, hope you liked the video, and as always, this is Dre, and I'll see you when I see you. Take care.